Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And Mark Carney went to see Donald Trump in Washington, expecting to bring something back to the Canadian people to show he is actually competent. Yet he is returning empty handed with nothing. Elbows down, knee pads on. That is Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada.
And we are back. Sorry for missing a few days. We have been saying that we're moving studios, so it's been quite a hectic few days.
Oh, yeah. Yesterday, I'm
Yep.
tired right now. I was tired on my last show. We're dealing with movers, installations for a lot of different stuff. So it'll be like this for the next couple of weeks, a little bit more sporadic than usual and not so many edited videos. But let's get into today's content.
And thank you for being here anyways, if you are. So yes, leading story, yes, Mark Carney and Donald Trump met. Trump says U.S. and Canada have natural conflict on trade as he meets Carney in the White House, but it was not a great showing as expected for Mark Carney.
Well, yeah, and Donald Trump pointed out specifically this is one of the hardest deals to negotiate because they are in direct competition with each other. For the last few decades, America has handed Canada everything, letting Canada tariff the United States and not putting tariffs in return. Donald Trump is trying to revitalize the United States and he wants to get all the business to the U.S. He said he's willing to cooperate well it's possible, but I think leading up to this 2026 Alberta separatist election, I think he's going to play hardball, hoping that Alberta actually separates from the United States and maybe even goes down to become the 51st state.
But it is funny because a lot of people that did elect Mark Carney wanted him to go hard against Trump and hard against the tariffs and all that, and he just didn't.
Well, yeah, it was all compliments today by Mark Carney. He is having to take a totally new strategy. His first strategy isn't working well. It's going to be very interesting because Mark Carney may want to call another snap election to try to get a majority government. I think he's finding it hard to govern as a non-majority government. He thinks now is probably the best time. The longer he's in office and nothing happens, the harder it's going to be to win an election. That being said, I just don't know if he can do it right now. If Trump keeps saying that he likes Mark Carney, it's going to be hard for Mark Carney to use Trump as the boogeyman continuously.
Because he did try to do that during his latest election, which he shouldn't have won, but magically he did.
Yeah.
But apparently the negotiations continue. President Trump spoke of mutual love between Canada and the U.S. in the Oval Office, saying that the people of Canada will love us again once details of the trade deal between the two countries are revealed. So far, those details remain vague, but there are some hints of positivity.
Well, I want to talk about a couple things here. And number one is Donald Trump and the U.S. government actually bought 5% in a mining company. It was expected that steel and aluminum tariffs may come down because of that. Mark Carney is also invested heavily in the United States in his own personal dealings. So if the United States wins, Mark Carney wins, but Canada loses. If any tariff did come down, it was expected to be the steel. The administration, the Canadian administration, even hinted at that, yet they're coming back completely empty-handed. They look completely incompetent at this point. Even Mexico has been doing fairly well. Their trade with the United States has actually gone up even with the tariffs.
And first, Trump acknowledged trade talks with Canada are more complicated than maybe any other agreement the U.S. has with other nations, in part because of two countries' competing business interests and geographical proximity. He said, however, that he wants Canada to do well in specific reference to auto manufacturing sector.
Yeah, and so far, Mark Carney and Donald Trump have been in office approximately the same time. Canada has lost $65 billion in investments, while Trump has gained $17 billion of investments just in the past 8 months. He's expecting to hit, $17 trillion Donald Trump has made for the United States. He's expecting to increase that by year's end to 20 trillion. Well, Mark Carney has lost 65 billion for Canada. And it doesn't look like there's really any room to grow that Canadian economy, especially with the United States looking at Canada as a direct competitor for private business.
And during the meeting itself, it did seem like Trump was bodying Carney over and over again and was able to get a bunch of things kind of almost over his head, and Carney just had to sit there and laugh. So it was not a good showing for him and his strength.
Well, Mark Carney has to get something going here, because if he would have got these steel tariffs and then been able to get a couple other things, maybe renegotiate the North American free trade deal, he could go into an election and possibly win that election with a majority government. But the way he's handling this tariff deal, I don't think he can win a majority government at this time. He should have took the Sheinbaum strategy. I'm not a big fan of Sheinbaum because of her liberal policies. That being said, she has handled the tariff negotiations extremely well to this point.
And we do have just one clip showing how it kind of went down, but there's millions of these. Just for time's sake, we'll show one. But from Mark Nixon, if you don't follow him and you're interested in Canadian politics, follow him. It says, break-in Donald Trump absolutely obliterates Mark Carney to his face.
But you know what? If I let this go, if
I'm not sure anything's working here. Oh, I don't have headphones.
Oh, right, I disconnected them. Sorry. That was me. Well, while he fixes the headphones, I'll continue speaking about Mark Carney. I did a video in Spanish, but however, I can translate here in English. He, as Guy was mentioning, does have a lot of his own investments in the US while he tries to get Canada to move away from the US, even though right before he got elected as Prime Minister, he decided it was more important to make sure that his business interests were secure, but not Canada's. At the same time, he hasn't really done much for the Canadian economy. Its GDP has gone down this past year to well below any other country in the G7, which is embarrassing as well for Canada. And just in general, with his whole talks, with the trade talks, with what he wanted to do to the United States, that was me, what he wanted to do to the United States, hasn't really worked out, because he was even forced to almost take away the 35, well, not forced, but he decided to take away the 35% tariff that he had imposed on the US when he realized that it just wasn't going to work out.
Yeah, Donald Trump is going to have to break Mark Carney because they have two diametrically opposed positions. Mark Carney was the architect of this climate change, climate carbon credit, new economy, digital currency, digital ID, and Donald Trump is going a totally new path against global governance.
But you know what? If I let this go, if we didn't win this election, if we had these people that were running, that were ruining our country, destroying our country with their open borders and men playing in women's sports and transgender from everybody and windmills all over.
Yeah, and we do have to say Mark Carney's kid is transgendered, so it was funny to kind of see him sit there and bite his lip and say absolutely nothing.
The place. If we allowed that to go on for another couple of years, we would be, I'm not sure that we'd even have a country. By the way, I'm not sure we would have even had a country. And now we have the most successful country in the world. But you know what?
And then he goes on to there talking about the $17 trillion of private investment he's got in the United States. It wasn't needed to be said, but Canada has lost $65 billion since Mark Carney has come into office. Canada is on the edge of financial collapse. Well, it looks like Donald Trump's tariff policy, so far, so good. He's trying to really blaze a new path because the United States was not headed in a good direction. It needed to shift to a completely opposite position, and it has. Let's go into the next story.
And speaking of crazy quasi-dictatorships, here in Mexico, apparently they want to ban memes about politicians from Clown World, and justifiably so. The ruling party just proposed a law that could jail people for up to 6 years for posting memes or videos that humiliate politicians. Interesting that there's that distinction. They call it protecting officials. Everyone else calls it censorship. If mocking power becomes illegal, you're not living in a democracy, you're living in a dictatorship.
Yeah, and this is very interesting because here in Mexico,
and that is our president.
We moved from Canada to Mexico because we couldn't stand the politics there. But in Mexico, there's no real conservative party, even though there are a lot of conservative people, because religion does have a fundamental basis in this country. That being said, oh God, I lost my train of thought there.
Well, let's go into what is actually happening. This is from La Derecha Diario, which is an Argentinian.
Oh, that being said, they're trying to censor anybody that's trying to make memes or speak up against politicians specifically. They want to commit their crimes in private. It's going to go for memes, and they're going to broaden that out. That being said, they're actually late to the party. The UK has already done this. They're arresting 12,000 people a year for internet crimes like memes. Canada is on the cutting edge of censorship with Bill C8 and C9. The rest of the EU loves censorship. The only country that is actually standing up for free speech is Donald Trump. But it's kind of funny that all these liberal countries said we need censorship, we need hate speech crimes because Donald Trump, we can't let him say all these things. The thing now is they're using these censorship laws to censor other liberal parties.
So Claudia Sheinbaum's party proposed an anti-meme law to censor people. The left-wing president seeks to shield her government from people's humor and criticism on social media. And we have seen some of this already kind of implemented through the political gendered violence rules that they have decided to enact here, some kind of, by saying that, for example, you can't post as a private citizen on X without receiving a harsh punishment if you're criticizing a female politician for corruption. And then that citizen that had to go through re-education training, she also had to post a bunch of apologies on X for 30 days until they realized how ridiculous it was.
Now, I will say this, if this doesn't pass and Claudia Sheinbaum does speak up against it, I will give her credit for that because every other Western country is already headed in this direction. It's not going to surprise me if Mexico does. I think this is really a defining moment of her administration. Will she stand up for free speech? She does have Trump pushing her in the right direction. She is extremely left-wing. Since Trump has gotten into office, she's trying to negotiate this tariff deal. She's come much further back to the center.
A new and concerning bill introduced by Mexican Congressman Armando Corona Arvizu from the ruling Morena party led by Communist President Claudia Sheinbaum has caused strong controversy in Mexico by proposing to censor people for posting memes on social media. The legislator proposed amending the federal penal code to punish with up to 6 years in prison and 300 days of fines those who create or share memes, stickers, GIFs, or edited videos that could affect the reputation or damage the dignity
of public officials. Public officials are completely corrupt worldwide. This isn't just a Mexico thing. I can look at the United States, Canada, especially the EU, every single country. We have 180 countries, and corruption is the common thread between every government. When they want to punish people for speaking up against politicians, it's absolutely insane. They want to do their crimes in private. This needs to be shut down. There is a major problem with violence when it comes to politics in Mexico. And now you actually want to punish people for speaking up and shining light when public officials are doing crimes.
And this is one of the most important tenets of free speech, being able to criticize your government and being able to highlight and show and bring to the light what is actually happening, especially with journalism, but also through comedy. And the fact that they're going after what is basically could be considered comedy as well is, we've seen it before. Well, it's not like this is new, but in Mexico now.
And I will say this, like I said, I don't like Sheinbaum, but when she does something right, like so far on these tariff deals, she's doing great. If she knocks down this free speech thing, doesn't let it pass, I'll give her credit again. I call it as I see it. I've been a big Trump supporter for a long time. It's not easy to be a Trump supporter in Mexico and previously in Canada. That being said, when Donald Trump does something I don't like, I call him out on it as well. I didn't like how the Epstein thing went down. I still don't like how that's going down. I didn't like how he promoted the jibby jabs so hard. There are quite a few things I didn't like. Even though a strike on Iran, that turned out well. But if it would have turned out to a full-blown forever war, I would have called them out on that too.
And the proposal, which has already been dubbed on social media as the anti-meme law or anti-sticker law, seeks to classify these actions as a form of so-called digital violence, again with that word, expanding this concept to the political sphere, which has caused concern among broad sectors of Mexican society.
Well, and the precedent's already been set in the UK, in the EU, in Canada, in Australia. So if she does pass this, she's going to be able to cite those precedents as this is the new normal. Hopefully Donald Trump pushes her in the right direction.
And Rafa, hello Rafa, thank you for being here, says, hello, you just reached 500 and then abandoned us. Sorry, it was not on purpose. And thank you all so much again for helping us reach 500 subscribers. We will continue to grow, but for these next 2 weeks, because we're continuing to grow, we're moving studios. So that's that's why we're all over the place.
Well, and yeah, also when we reach 500 subscribers, usually we're able to get super chats at that point. We don't have quite enough watch hours, so we still have to wait to get another 1,000 watch hours. Once that happens, we'll let people know if they can and they do want to, they can super chat at that point. But right now, we still haven't met the mark.
Yes. And we'll be gone for a little bit longer. So,
yeah.
But thank you for your patience. And Rafa also says, did you see what happened to Lindsay Shepherd? She was fired from her job at the Conservative Party of BC over a Conservative tweet. Yes, I did see that. We didn't include that, but unfortunately, the BC, British Columbia Conservative Party in Canada is not conservative at all. And we've known for a while that the Conservative Party in general in Canada has not been acting or trying to pretend even to be conservative. It's basically like the Democrats in the States. But because Canada is so far gone, people think that that's conservative. But it is insane and it is concerning because she did put up a big fight against all these kinds of things initially. And she had already fought against the university. So seeing her now fight against the party that had welcomed her in is insane.
Yeah, the only thing that's going to make Canada wake up is if Alberta does separate or at least gets that to a vote and it wakes the Canadian government up and stops treating conservatives like doormats. Whether Alberta separates or becomes a 51st state or other provinces have the same idea, maybe it can be a wake-up call to the Canadian government. The Canadian government seems to be cashing in and taking the silverware, stuffing their pockets with it before the country goes down. Canada is unlike any other country. They have unlimited natural resources, whether that's lumber, whether that's mining, whether that's water, whether that's electricity, yet they don't want to cash it in. They actually put laws to stop their own government from exploiting the natural resources, which at this time, they really need to do it to float their economy.
Yes. So yes, Canada is insane, continues to be so, and with the showing of Mark Carney today, just continues to confirm it as well. But Canada isn't the only crazy one because as we have been warning and talking about on end on this channel, the CBDCs are coming to Europe. Now we're in October and it's coming.
It's here.
Yes.
So it's already in Europe. It's phase one. Phase one, they're going to try to get people to adopt it willingly. When that doesn't work, because there is a huge pushback against this, I'm sure it's going to become mandatory. There are already a lot of private businesses are already starting to mandate this, like DoorDash. They're going to force people for certain deliveries to have their digital ID. Digital ID is the gateway and the fundamental basis. Everything else is based on whether that's digital currency, carbon credits. It's the way they're going to lock down the population and turn them into a slave population slowly but surely. If we don't let them get digital ID, they won't be able to do this. I put this article in here just to quickly go over this again. I have been covering it a lot on the show lately.
I think we watched this one already.
No, we haven't. Let's play it.
Okay. So I remember that background.
The digital euro is on the move. Yesterday, the Governing Council of the ECB approved the opening of the preparation phase. It will be a journey, and we will walk the journey together with the legislator. All European institutions will be involved to make sure that Europe is equipped with the currency of the future. Cash
1.5
is here to stay.
It's almost done.
Okay.
You will have all options, cash and digital cash. So what does it mean for you? For consumers, it would be free and easy to use everywhere in the euro area. All of that, of course, is subject to the legislative process. Cash or digital, the choice will be yours.
Okay, and this should have been the line that they took right from the beginning, but they didn't. Everybody knows they're going to take away cash and replace it with a purely digital currency, and that's going to be based upon a digital ID. Right now, they're trying to change their messaging because there is such a big pushback against this thing. As long as they do have the two options, I highly encourage people to use cash in any country they're in. It really stops this authoritarian global government from really sitting in its roots with digital ID and digital currency.
And it also helps send a message to those governments if their little game plan isn't working. The problem is, I don't know how many people are informed enough to be able to know that, number one, that's what they have to do, and number two, what the consequences would be of adopting or just going along with, or, oh, it's just easier, as she said. It's more convenient.
And she's trying to make it sound like this is an option. This is phase one. It's an option in phase one. Come phase two, it's not going to be an option. They need to get willing compliance from a large enough base population. So when they do force compliance, they'll have cheerleaders on their side, citizens that have already been using digital currency. If everybody rejects this thing, it's going to be very, very hard for them to continue to push this. Another wrinkle to this is Donald Trump is creating his own stable coin, which it looks like he may actually use digital currency and cash, and that will completely undermine the digital euro.
But funnily enough, some people that are trying to, go back to 10 years ago when censorship was actually a thing, a bunch of woke, ridiculous celebrities are now trying to relaunch a McCarthy-era committee to defend free speech, which is ironic because they were the very same ones that were asking and joyfully jumping up and down whenever conservatives or people on the right were being censored by them.
Yeah, and it's weird because these people live in an absolute bubble in the United States. Leftists in the United States, you can only look around the rest of the world, whether it's the UK, whether it's the EU, Canada, Australia, you name the Western country, and they are censoring people. They've been censoring them for the last 10 years. Conservatives really don't have a voice. They cancel their bank accounts. They'll jail them. They'll give them tens of thousands of dollars worth of fines. There's 5 or 6 different punishments they actually do legalized cancellation of citizens. In the United States, that's not the case. Donald Trump is implementing censorship through through private businesses, and he's leaving it up to them. Boycotts are working on the conservative side. That's why the liberals are feeling it in the United States, but it's not legislated into effect like it is in the rest of the world.
And even with the Conservative Party in Canada, for example, Lindsay Shepherd getting fired for it. On Wednesday, over 550 celebrities relaunched a group first organized during the post-war World War II Red Scare, the Committee for the First Amendment. Their intent is to stand up in what they call a defense of our constitutional rights, adding, the federal government is once again engaged in a coordinated campaign to silence critics in the government, the media, the judiciary, academia, and the entertainment industry. So all of those where there was censorship of other voices, but now they're scared.
Well, let's remember the Twitter files. Let's remember Joe Biden with Facebook. Zuckerberg went on Joe Rogan, said the Biden administration was directly contacting them on a daily basis through the FBI, telling them who and when and why to cancel them, and they had to comply because they were scared. Almost every social media company was forced into compliance of cancellation of conservative voices for the last decade. The fact that these people don't know this just shows that they're in a bubble, or maybe they do know, but they just don't care.
Current group is headlined by actor and activist Jane Fonda, whose father, actor Henry Fonda, was one of the early members of the First Committee for the First Amendment, which was founded in the 1940s. Other members of the newly reformed committee include filmmakers Spike Lee, Barry Jenkins, J.J. Abrams, Patty Jenkins, Aaron Sorkin, and Judd Apatow.
Well, and this whole thing is based off of Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel's getting canceled. No, he got his job back. Nobody canceled him. If the company would have fired him, it would have been legally justified. That being said, he didn't even get fired from his job. No. There was zero censorship going on here. For conservatives for the last decade, we've moved from Canada to Mexico because there is so much censorship in Canada right now. In the EU, in the UK, there is censorship worldwide, and it's against conservatives. The EU regularly rigs elections, and they need censorship in order to try to rig those elections.
And here in Mexico, yeah. I'm guessing that's part of why they're trying to implement that law we just talked about. Rafa says bartering will be the only option to be free under the CBDC regime. And yes, and that's kind of why I keep talking about in Spanish, keep talking about going back to the agrarian societies of before and how the family and all the unit within the community that worked together kind of worked okay.
Yeah, if this YouTube thing ever works out for us, we want to have a homestead in the countryside, and I would love to barter. That is the system of the future.
Yes. But so yes, ridiculous celebrities trying to say they're being censored right after they censored everybody.
Yeah.
And they ordered and asked for everybody else to be censored.
They even censored the president of the United States back in 2016 when Donald Trump was in office. That's what kicked off the censorship. It's been 9 years. That's almost a decade they've been doing this. They're now losing control in the United States. So now they're asking for free speech because they want that talking point back. They want to say, we're the party of free speech, but they haven't acted like that for over 10 years now.
Yes, they spent canceling and highlighting and pointing at everybody that didn't agree with their opinions. And now they want to protect those same opinions, which are still protected. They can still go say crazy things. If their employer reacts or somebody else that they're doing business with doesn't like it, well, then that's kind of on them.
And you only have to look at Donald Trump. I mean, anytime he even gets close to censorship or anything comes up in his administration, his base pushes back hard. When they were canceling Jimmy Kimmel, I said I didn't agree with what Jimmy Kimmel said. I don't like what he said, but I don't think we should censor him in any way, shape, or form. And Donald Trump is very sensitive to his base. He does understand one of the fundamental principles is free speech. The other one is anti-war. That's kind of what brought the libertarians over and what made the conservatives the big tent party and really brought populism into the conservative movement and completely reformed modern day conservatism, at least in the United States.
And funnily enough, speaking of modern day conservatism, it seems like Japan is turning based once again after they had all these crazy ideas to start trying to be like Canada or another of the insane countries here in the West. Breaking news from Mark Nixon, Sanae Takaichi becomes Prime Minister of Japan. A strong conservative woman just crushed the woke establishment. The left is in shambles. This is the way.
Okay, let's talk about this for a minute.
Sure.
And that being said, I don't know a lot about her. I tried to do a little bit of research. It seems like she is conservative. Japan has traditionally been conservative. As of late, they've kind of betrayed their citizens and brought in mass immigration from Africa, and the citizens are completely against it. It seems like this is one of the reasons that she got elected, was to kind of let Japan go its own way. Even if the population is going to collapse, make it as successful as you can for your citizens. Even if it's not economically successful, you can still have a successful nation without a bunch of immigrants coming in and taking away the fundamental culture of that nation.
And we had already started to see some increased violence in Japan as well. And I think this is in Japanese, so I don't know.
And let's just, the only thing keeping Japan afloat right now, the UK and Japan are expected to be one of the first countries to collapse. After that, maybe Canada. That being said, they are beloved by Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is helping to float that country, much like he is doing Argentina.
よって高市早苗君をもって当選者と決しました。
Okay, Japan is in a lot of trouble economically right now. Their bond market, a lot of things. If a country collapses, it's going to probably be Japan or the UK first. That being said, they're going to have to figure out how to do something here. They do have an interesting spot, is they can be the US's foothold in the Asia Pacific. So they do have that to offer to the United States. The last administration before this conservative government, the last couple of administrations, have been buddying up to China somewhat, or at least trying to play both sides. I think she's going to have to pick a side, and I hope that side is the United States. That being said, it might not be the best option for Japan. But they are completely integrated into the Western economy. So it's going to be very hard to tell the United States to kick rocks and buddy up to China.
And back in the US, there is still some craziness happening because this is a long story if you didn't know it, but the person that tried to attack Supreme Court Justice, now Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, that person that tried to unalive him is now apparently trans and going by her. It's a biological male. But apparently the judge only gave him 8 years in prison and also started using his new pronouns and his new name, and it apparently became a heartwarming story for a lot of people.
This is going to go seriously wrong for anybody trying to change their gender in prison so they can get into a women's prison in the United States. I think Donald Trump is going to put it into that. All those inmates are going to have to come back to male prisons. When they do, they are going to be seriously abused. I don't think the future looks bright for this kid.
Fox News alert, Kavanaugh's wannabe trans assassin, Nicholas Roski, was sentenced today. 8 years in prison for trying to kill a Supreme Court justice. 8 years. Prosecutors were asking for 30. That's a big difference. Why? Well, you'd have to ask Judge Deborah Boardman, a Biden appointee, who thinks this isn't an assassination story. It's a story of trans acceptance. Quote, I'm heartened that this terrible infraction has helped the Roski family accept their daughter for who she is. During the hearing, Boardman asked Roski, Miss Roski, have you read the sentencing report? And in a deep, booming baritone, Roski said, yes. Boardman called Roski by his new name, Sophie, and grilled the DOJ about sending Sophie to a woman's prison and giving him hormone therapy. Is this lady serious? She just gave a guy 10 years for wire fraud. Is wire fraud worse than trying to kill a Supreme Court justice? It is, if the assassin's trans. Bondi says the DOJ will be appealing the sentence.
Yeah, and we have to, this kind of brings up the issue as well as all the grapes going on in prisons in the United States from males being put into female prisons just because they identify as a female. The prison system solution to this was to hand out condoms to the female inmates who were getting raped. This was an absolute scandal, and it really went under the radar for the past decade, but this case kind of points that out again, and I wonder what's going to happen. Hopefully he is put in a male prison.
But I mean, if he does get hormone therapy, at least we can be happy in knowing that he'll probably be chemically castrated by those drugs. So, I mean, not much to look forward after coming out of prison. But in the meantime, while they take effect, he can still go do, I guess, whatever he wants, according to this judge. Also, craziness in one of the craziest states from the U.S. that brings us a lot of craziness and where a lot of stuff has been happening lately, including Nick Sortor here himself posting this. He was arrested and then released, and then the Justice Department and the police in Portland actually said that they didn't have evidence or anything they could actually charge him with, even though he did get arrested. So he got out of that, but that also got the attention of Kristi Noem and a lot of other people in the Trump administration about the jailing of this independent journalist.
This wasn't the only case of this. It seems like local state police are actually arresting counter protesters that are nonviolent and just they're filming, kind of taking the sign of Antifa in Portland, while the federal government is going after illegal immigrants and Antifa members that are violent on the ground. So it's a direct conflict between federal and state police. It's a very interesting situation that is happening right now.
But today, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem met with Portland's mayor and gave him an ultimatum. Actually, the mayor of Portland has been saying, oh, it's all peaceful here. Nothing's happening. We don't need federal agents. We don't need any more policing or any help. But she says if the city does not clamp down on Antifa militants outside the ICE facility, she will send 4 times the amount of federal agents.
They were temporarily able to stop Trump from bringing in National Guard from Portland. So Donald Trump decided to bring them in from California, found a loophole, and now he is implementing the law on the ground in Portland.
I met with him and also the superintendent of the state police. I told them what we wanted. We wanted more security here at the building, a bigger buffer zone to keep our officers safe. We wanted to have their streets opened up again and not let the anarchists run this city anymore, that we would ask them to continue to back us up like we've been asking for instead of what they've been doing the last several months, which is just leaving our officers hang out to dry. The chief asked if I wanted to meet with the mayor, and I said absolutely. Came back and just met with the mayor, and I'm so extremely disappointed. He's continuing to play politics, did not commit to any of those promises, and said that he'd give me an answer by tomorrow, and I'm hopeful that he will. What I told him is that if he did not follow through on some of these security measures for our officers, we were going to cover him up with more federal resources, and that we were going to send 4 times the amount of federal officers here so that the people of Portland could have some safety. They could have some security. Today, Jesse, we went and got a sex offender off the streets here in Portland that had been violating minors, and we're going to bring him to justice. And this Portland mayor tried to brag about him making our streets safer. No, absolutely not. It is our federal CBP and ICE officers that are cleaning up this city, and every single day they're going to stay dedicated to doing that.
So none of these officials...
That's good. And we also have to talk about a lot of these states, these extremely liberal states like California, like Portland, like Washington, like Chicago. They are hiring leftist radicalists into the police forces. So they are not wanting to implement the laws against their own. So the federal government is having to come in there. And that's why the federal government really focused in on kind of cleaning out the ranks of the military, of the FBI, because Biden had infested the federal government with these leftist lunatics as well. There was another story that recently came out that an Antifa member, an outward-facing Antifa member, he was a public known Antifa member, was actually part of the Canadian military, a high-ranking member of the Canadian military. And it's an absolute scandal coming out of Canada right now. But these people are trying to infiltrate the police forces, the FBI, and federal law enforcement.
And again, they already have them, which is why the current administration does, I think, need to do a little bit more effort to start cleaning house more. It is trying, but
they are
slowly.
doing a good job on the federal level. The problem is they have no way to go in and clean out these state police departments. And that's why there has been major conflicts between federal and state police. This could lead to a civil war. Is it? I don't think so. But this would be one of the things that would really put police against police.
Okay, Tim Pool. Tim Pool always says civil war.
I'm more.
But speaking of pitting people against people, right now there is a government shutdown in the U.S., mostly caused by the Democrats, well, fully caused by the Democrats. But apparently it is backfiring because by refusing a routine continuing resolution, Senate Democrats triggered a shutdown and gave Trump the power to decide which programs live or end. What they thought would hurt him, it may become their greatest political blunder.
Okay, we can stop it there because we're going to play some videos about this. But before we do, I just want to go over what caused this government shutdown. Basically, the last 13 times they voted on it over the Trump administration and the Biden administration, they had what was called a clean CR, which is a clean continuing resolution, meaning they just approve everything as it was approved before, and it gives them another 7 months and another 7 months and another 7 months. And they've been doing that for the last 13 votes. It didn't happen this time because the Democrats said that they wanted Medicare for illegal immigrants, and they wanted to add that into the bill at the cost of about $1 trillion, I believe it was. And the Trump administration just said, absolutely not. Either we're going to sign a clean CR, which means the government just continues as normal. The conservatives won't stuff any pork into the bill, and the Democrats won't stuff any pork into the bill. The problem is the Democrats don't want to do that anymore.
I'm guessing this one, I haven't seen this one.
Oh, the couple of these clips kind of just explain what's going on in a simple way. So I thought we would show it to everybody.
Are we witnessing one of the biggest political blunders in congressional history? Senate Democrats refused to pass a continuing resolution, a routine measure that keeps government open while negotiations continue. Instead, they chose a shutdown. Led by Chuck Schumer, but forced by the radicals in his party, they believed this would hurt President Trump. But here's the mistake. When the government shuts down, funding authority for programs and agencies expires. Contracts are suspended. And in that moment, the president and his budget director decide which functions are essential and which are not. That means President Trump now has the power to decide which Democrat-controlled programs are restarted and which are erased. Once something is cut, Congress cannot simply flip a switch to bring it back. They must reappropriate funds, hold votes, and fight uphill battles. The Democrats don't have the votes. So what looked like a tactical play may turn out to be their greatest strategic disaster. They gave Trump the very tool he needed to slash programs they've guarded for decades, legally, and with the full authority of the shutdown.
Okay. And what happened here is a lot of this, there was a ton of money pumped into Democrat officials to vote on this government shutdown, to actually shut down the government. They thought this would cause chaos and make Trump look bad, but it is completely backfiring on them. Trump is going to be able to kneecap the deep state at this point. He's been doing a great job over the past 8 months. So this is really another turning point in the administration. If he makes the right cuts, we'll see what he kind of does here.
And recently also Caroline Leavitt, according to MAGA Voice, showed proof that Democrats will only reopen government if illegal aliens receive around $200 billion in healthcare. And a lot of people are kind of cheering the shutdown on because if this is the sticking point, they don't want it to reopen. However, there are a lot of people that, are in a tough situation job-wise right now.
The Democrats' current position is that the only way the American government can reopen is if illegal aliens can get free health care. Don't take my word for it. Just look at what's inside of the Democrats' proposal to reopen the government. Their funding proposal would result in nearly $200 billion spent on health care for illegal aliens and other non-citizens over the next decade. To put this in perspective, $200 billion is enough money to fund the entire Children's Health Insurance Program, which provides health insurance to low-income children and women. Under the Democrats' proposal, the millions of illegal aliens who improperly were granted asylum and paroled under the Biden administration would once again be allowed to receive Medicaid. The Democrats' current...
And let's remember
government can
that they're trying to clear illegal immigrants out of the United States right now. The best way to clear illegal immigrants out of the United States is have them self-deport. The only way to have them self-deport is to cut off all benefits, including Medicare. And if other countries would do this, they would see they wouldn't have to deport their illegal immigrants. They would do it on their own. Canada should take note. The UK should take note. The EU should take note. None of them are willing to do it. They all are willing to talk tough because their citizens are starting to revolt and speak up against the government. That being said, the government wants to pay lip service to its citizens, but not actually do anything. Behind the scenes, they're providing massive benefits to these illegal immigrants. So far in the Trump administration, over 1 million people have self-deported. More people have self-deported rather than ICE having to deport them. Why? Because it's not a friendly environment for them anymore. There are no mass benefits. Medicare is about to get shut off, and it's getting increasingly hard to find a job in the United States if you're an illegal immigrant.
And in a lot of other countries that don't usually receive that many illegal immigrants, or that want to stay at least in those countries, they don't get free healthcare. Like a lot of these other countries that didn't become or weren't migration hubs that now may be becoming so don't have those types of programs. And one of those countries is Mexico, where we are. Santiago Roman Delgado, if you don't follow him, he's actually pretty good if you speak Spanish. He says, now migrants are not looking to get to the U.S. Now their plans are to stay in Mexico. There's a caravan of about 1,200 immigrants that are coming to Mexico City. We have to say it loud and clear. Mexico is does not have the conditions to be an open door country with so much migration. There has to be better migratory policies enacted now. And part of a new migrant caravan towards the Mexico City, they do not want to get to the U.S. And a lot of them, most of them, are trying to find legal status to be able to work in Mexico, and they are saying that they just have discarded the option of going to the U.S., a lot of them from Venezuela and Haiti.
Wages are already low enough in Mexico for Mexican citizens. Having caravan like this, if it's successful, is going to only invite more caravans of people, undercutting the wages of Mexican citizens in Mexico. Now, I understand we do have a lot of Mexican viewers, and they may not understand when you have a mass influx of illegal immigrants into your country, it undercuts the lowest wages of the lowest people in the society. That's why Mexicans and blacks in the United States, it undercut their wages more than anybody else. A lot of people in Mexico don't understand the impact of illegal migrants because a lot of these migrants just pass through and go to the United States, and the United States is where they feel the brunt of the impact of what illegal migrants do, especially mass caravans like this. So hopefully Sheinbaum gets her shit together here, and this is a one and done situation, and they get rid of them, or at least they stop more caravans from coming in. The southern border of Mexico is fairly small. It would be a lot easier to stop them at the southern border of Mexico and not even let them in.
Unfortunately, Morena and Sheinbaum and a lot of the people that support Morena are actually happy in a way that people are coming and that Mexico is becoming this hub for asylum seekers and people that need help. However, we don't even have services for the people that most need them here in Mexico. We do not have an infrastructure. If Canada doesn't have an infrastructure for the influx of migrants that they're having, just imagine how Mexico actually is. And the problem is also that they're not being vetted. Same problem that was happening in the US, when we don't know who's coming in. We have seen an increase in crime, not from Mexicans and the usual suspects within Mexico, but also those kinds of same organized crime organizations
also
coming from Venezuela, Colombia, a lot of other places, and also impacting Mexico on top of what we already have happening here.
And we're not saying immigration is necessarily a bad thing. A certain amount of immigration is needed, especially in a country that is maybe not as quite as industrialized as a lot of other Western countries. So you want certain skilled people, especially in leadership roles, to show people how it's done in other places, so then they can build off of that success. What you don't want is unfettered illegal immigration. That undercuts the poorest in the society and makes them even poor, and really creates more than just a two-tiered society, almost like a slave class that the wealthy can profit off of.
Not only illegal, but unchecked as well. So having no checks on who's coming in, why they're coming in, what they're bringing, who they're bringing, what connections they have already within the country. Like, all of that is also mounting.
And you also have to think that Donald Trump is really negotiating this tariff deal with Sheinbaum, but a lot of this has a military component. Will they go against the cartels? Will they not? Maybe the cartels want illegal migrants into the country right now so they can use them as workers.
But also, a lot of them are coming with already ties to, be it Tren de Agua or a bunch of other organizations all over Latin America and all over, where they're coming from, because it's caravan, they're walking up. So.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the next story here.
But one of the provinces in Canada that may be, safe eventually from all of this, or the similar things to this, is Alberta, because Washington apparently has affirmed support for Alberta's sovereignty, so them separating from Canada in an APP delegation visit.
Now, this is very important because the Canadian Constitution is one of the only constitutions in the world that says that individual provinces can have a vote to separate from Canada at any time if they get a certain number of signatures. Those number of signatures are getting very close. This vote is expected to take place in 2026. If they vote to separate, but the Canadian government doesn't recognize that vote, it's going to make it very hard to separate from Canada unless the United States steps in and says, we recognize their vote and we will support them in their separation, not necessarily to become part of the United States, although they could, but they're going to need a big player like the United States to actually recognize that that was a legitimate vote for separation of Alberta. If Alberta separates, you're going to see Saskatchewan separate, possibly BC and the Yukon.
Yes, so the Alberta Prosperity Project today announced the successful completion of its second strategic visit to Washington, D.C., where they met with senior Trump administration officials to advance Alberta's path toward full independence, building on groundbreaking April discussions that drew explicit U.S. support for Alberta's sovereignty. This follow-up engagement held over the weekend in Washington, D.C., yielded even stronger commitments, underscoring the growing international recognition of Alberta's right to self-determination amid ongoing federal overreach from Ottawa.
Yeah, I'm hoping behind the scenes the United States backs this separatist movement publicly. They're not really saying anything about it. It's hard to see headlines in the United States, but privately, I hope they start to back it because they're going to need financial support in order to kind of get the word out there that Canada is collapsing. They're headed in the wrong direction. They've been headed in the wrong direction for the 10 years. They have no plan to switch directions or cash in on their natural resources. A matter of fact, they're doing the opposite. It's almost turning into a socialist society. It's already part of the way they're now with their medical.
Yes, and speaking of from Mark Nixon, again, if you don't follow him, go follow him. Canada is sitting on the biggest economic opportunity in history, $600 billion investment, 1.2 trillion GDP boost, but Liberals are blocking it with anti-energy agenda designed by Mark Carney.
And they have buyers for all this energy. The world is desperate for energy, especially the EU. The United States will gladly buy cheap oil, cheap natural gas, cheap mining. The problem is the government is blocking it with all kind of legal legislation that makes it very hard to do business in Canada, not just for natural resources, but any kind of business.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you look at the past, if you use the word Enbridge, you're talking about someone that has already proposed this.
There's someone on the left.
In the past. If you talk about TMX being involved, as we know, as painful as it was, that was built, and there are others that have built in that regard, and all of these customers have, with the right circumstances, supported pipelines. So I don't think you have to look too far to see concrete, real examples of Enbridge and other pipelines being willing to be the proponent of a pipeline if the conditions are set. Mm-hmm. Capital will go to where the conditions are set, and today the conditions are not set for that pipeline to exist in Canada. It's existing in other parts of the world, and it seems to me, and I think most Canadians, if you look at opinion polling, I think we're talking about 88% of people recognize and believe that the oil and gas industry is critical to Canada, and about 75% are supportive of building oil pipelines and think we can do that at the same time as finding ways to do it less intensively from a carbon perspective. So not only are there possibilities to be proponents out there, importantly, Canadians are looking for the leadership to actually carry that out.
Some of the things that you're talking about and what you need removed, from your perspective, does it matter if it's a blanket removal of all of these regulations, i.e. the tanker ban, the emissions cap, and industrial carbon levy, versus a case-by-case exemption that are issued by the major projects office? Do you think?
Yeah, and Mark Carney has changed the legislation in Canada so he can do a case-by-case approval of individual projects. This is how Russia is run. This is how a lot of other dictators run their natural resources industry, and it is based upon bribes and payoffs. Mark Carney is trying to cash in on Canada right now.
you have a preference one over the other, I guess is my question.
Well, here's what I would say to that, Mike. Look, I think that having bespoke regulation is not a great way to formulate capital and bring it together. So, look, that may work on occasion. There may be a particular project one wants to pursue and the government may want to pursue. That's up to them. But I think what you would be better off doing is creating the conditions across the entire country that will allow capital to come and these projects to be pursued. The Public Policy Forum put out a report recently where there are some $600 billion of projects that are looking for an opportunity to be built. And that if those are built, they could add $1.1 trillion to Canada's GDP by 2035.
Okay,
So
that's good.
And Canada's GDP, as I said, is the lowest right now in the G7 and nearing other countries that you wouldn't usually consider as successful.
And it doesn't have to be. Mark Carney was the architect of this new economy based upon climate credits. And he was expected that the EU, the UK, all these Western countries would basically have this monopoly on the new economic industry. But Donald Trump put a wrench in that. And what's going to happen now, I don't know, but we'll keep an eye on Canada.
And we'll continue to keep an eye on Canada because there's another horrible, disgusting story coming out of there about what they're using their maid medical assistants in dying for now that Live Action and some other outlets have discovered it. And I'll say this, being pro-life doesn't only have to focus and doesn't only focus on children, abortion, etc., but it's being pro all life, pro all forms of life, and against the cult of death that we continue to see trying to take over a bunch of countries, including Mexico. But in Canada, this is coming from Live Action.
Why don't we go over to RUMBLE because these stories started to get hot from here. I think this was the first story that was
we still have like half of the stories to go, but yes, we'll go over to RUMBLE. We haven't been on for a while, so we have a lot of spicy stories as well. So we will see you over. I have to make a banner that says we're going to Rumble.
If you haven't subscribed, please do so.
Yes.
We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers now, so hopefully we can get there.
Yes, and we will be a bit sporadic these next 2 weeks, but we'll be back stronger than ever in like 2 weeks.
We're moving studios.
Yes, and also on October 9th, I will be on WDW Pro again for my every 2-week appearance. So hope to see you there. That will still be happening. So thank you also so much to Rafa for all your chats here on YouTube. And now we're jumping over to RUMBLE, same channel name, and please subscribe there too. Thank you.
Okay, we're at 95 subscribers on Rumble. Supposedly we have to get to 100 and then we can apply to be official creators on that site. If you're not subscribed on